أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So inshallah we will wrap up Surah Al-Kafirun today. So today we can look at the big picture and get a concluding, or let's wrap it up to see what does the in general message tell us, how we can apply. قل يا أيها الكافرون, say, O you that reject faith, لا أعبد ما تعبدون, I don't worship that which you worship, ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد, nor do you worship that which I worship, ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم, and I am not a worshipper to that which you have been wont to worship, ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد, nor do you worship that which I worship, لكم دينكم ولي ديني, to you is your religion and to me my religion. So we discussed almost all the verses until the last one, as far as I remember. If there's anything missing, correct me. These were the questions we initially asked. Talked about kul, the emphasis on kul. We talked about who is kafir, what is kufr. And we also talked about why it is speaking to ayyuhal kafirun, although kul is speaking to me as a singular person, ya ayyuhal kafirun, I am expected to address a group of people. So there's plurality in there. So me being single, the addressee of me being plural, we talked about that. And there was this altercation between me and the believer, or the addressee and the believer, let's say also in the case of messenger and the unbeliever, the kafirun. It was an interesting back and forth. I don't worship that which you worship, nor do you worship that which I worship. And I am not a worshipper to that which you have been wont to worship, nor do you worship that which I worship. Just a second. I will speak. I need to drink water. Just a second. Okay, sorry for the interruption. So this back and forth was happening. So multiple things were at play here. I look at the big picture, what I see here is worship is at the center of this conversation. It started with addressing deniers, but then the topic is brought up as worship, which was interesting. So it was not saying that I don't believe to whatever you believe, you don't believe to whatever I believe. So the conversation is not going on in the basis of belief or denial, but it's going on the basis of worship, which is interesting. And we talked about what is ibadah, what it means to worship. There's this state of being a worshiper, which is realizing your neediness, but also showing this in action is ibadah. I mean, you can be cognizant of your state, but demonstrating this with your actions, with your behavior, with your life is another level. And it's also interesting that It is saying that you, O denier, you are also worshiping something. These were the things that we discussed last week. So it's not that denier doesn't worship anything, because it sounds, especially in this day and age, religion is so restrictive with all these rules and whatnot, worshiping, and being non-religious or even anti-religious is as a freedom. But in here it is saying that no, you do worship a certain thing as well. But what we worship is, there's no intersection between the two. This is what is being mentioned in here, is what I am saying. And then, lekum dinukum waliye dini. So, deen, these were the last slides and the last verse that we did not discuss last time. So, let's quickly cover that as well, and then look at the big picture together, inshallah. And yeah, I see that people are choosing to join online. So since you're online, you would be expected to talk as well, folks. Okay. And just a second. Let me make sure audio is out. Okay. Deen is religion. Lekum dinukum waliye dini. So again, this is another interesting twist to how it started and now how it is ending. It started with denial. And denier is denying God, denying religion, denying everything. But now we come to a point and then we are saying that to you is your religion, to me is mine. To you is your religion, to me is mine, which makes me ask two questions here. First of all, well, maybe more than two. Let's remember what deen was. We talked about this before. Let's remember that. But in addition to this, how come denier have a religion? Does denier really have a religion? Or, I mean, the person is already denying God and everything. What sort of a religion we are talking about? In the light of how we will talk about whatever deen is, let's question what is the deen of the denier. And then the third question would be, how is ibadah, worship, related to deen? Because denier was worshiping something. So what is my worship and its relationship to my deen? What is denier's worship and how it relates to denier's deen? These are a set of questions that I have for you. And since I only have 1.5.
Still
Okay. 2 adults, 1 young person as my on-site participants. Online is more crowded today.
Is it because they know that you are sick and they don't want to get invited?
I don't know. I don't know why they're not here. But we will charge them some fee for not being here, with the hope that this will bring them in next week. $100 for every day absent.
Oh, who receives the $100?
Donation.
Okay.
For a good cause. Yes, what do you think? Let me remind what we talked about deen before, and then from there on I will ask your opinion. For deen, we were going to even the roots of the word itself, and we said that it comes from dain, like the feeling indebted to, or debt. Dain is debt. So do I feel indebted to someone, or do I feel entitled? This was the major distinction that we were mentioning when we were talking about deen. Yawmiddin was the like Maliki Yawmiddin, as it's mentioned in Surah Al-Fatiha, which is the day of judgment as it is described, or the day of really facing outcomes of my responsibility. So if I live the life as if like I deserve things and I'm not indebted to anyone, versus if I live the life where I feel I'm not entitled for anything and I'm feeling indebted to the creator or the giver. So a responsible versus a irresponsible life. This is the Yawmuddin in which these right and wrong is going to be separated from each other. And of course, this has this type of an understanding should have an outcome in my life. If I feel like I'm not entitled to anything, I am a guest here, and I need to act according to the wishes of the owner of the palace, owner of the guest house, then that is what deen is. And when we come to institutionalized religion, as it is commonly referred to today, this is nothing but my maker telling me how he wants me to be. And now, lakum dinukum waliya dini, in this case, as if I am being expected to say, or the messenger was expected to say that, to me is my religion. So there's this, my understanding of feeling indebtedness and acting accordingly versus you feeling like you're entitled to get something and you're living an irresponsible life as such, and it's totally separate from each other. This could be one way to take it. Yes.
Let me first read it. So using your, like, based on your explanation, it also kind of like further complicates, okay? Because when you say, deen is being indebted and opposite of it, feeling entitled, applying here, we can ask the same question, like, if you think you are entitled, so you are not indebted to anything, you don't feel in that, then if you are a believer, if you feel indebted, then you have a religion. And if you don't have a religion, one may say, right? And it goes to the original question that you asked, like here we're talking about the Kafirun and still religion, what religion? But they don't have religion, you can say. But when you take the word entitled, it is like you refuse to be indebted towards something, but entitlement also means you are indebted to whatever the opposite. So, for instance, if I say I'm entitled to get your praise, for instance, right? It means there's a depth between this praise and myself that has to be fulfilled. So I'm placing the depth from one place to another place. Before, like for instance, if you are a believer according, like with definition of Quran, you would say, no, the all praise goes to Allah. That's it, right? Now you place the debt as the praise and Allah, and you have to pay this debt by praising Him. But when you say, I am entitled to praise, then you say the debt is between you and the praise, or the whoever would praise, so it needs to be satisfied as well. So there is no escape from this debt. You're only saying that, no, that this debt is for X or Y. So the same way, when you deny something, when you say, no, I don't believe what you say, it automatically means you believe in something else.
Mm-hmm.
Let me stop here. I can give examples later. I don't want to speak too much.
Okay. So you were listening as you were walking?
Yeah, I heard you guys were charging, so I was like, after running.
Okay, that's good. So you're for today, only $25
Oh,
because
okay.
we are a quarter late. So, Dean, we talked about Dean, your Dean versus my Dean. So still for the unbeliever, a Dean is being mentioned in here. What should we understand from that was our question.
And when you talked about death, like I also remembered how like a lot of like the problems with like following a new religion at the time, and I feel like it's a little lesser now, but it still must be there. But it's the idea of, like I can't leave my parents' religion. So it's like they felt indebted to their parents' God or their parents, which is why they felt like they just couldn't move away from it.
I see. So, yeah, taking Dean as more of a cultural, how shall we say that? I belong to that community, so I have to follow it because my forefathers have been following it, sort of a thing. So you're feeling indebted towards your traditional family and whatnot, not necessarily a direct connection between your provider and you. Yes.
So word unbeliever is, like we already discussed this before, how the word iman shouldn't be translated as a belief. But we do. And there, okay, there are certain problems still, but it's not as significant as its opposite. So when we translate iman as belief, and then take the la yu'minun, for instance, as unbeliever, or the one who doesn't believe, then it becomes really problematic. Because when you say unbeliever, it's as if like you are naming someone, and it means he doesn't believe in anything. But there is no such thing. Like, it's not possible. Everybody believes in something. So the opposites here are not, believer and unbeliever. Those with iman and those without iman. So those who have a satisfactory understanding of things, who are in peace, in a healthy mind, and those who are not. But they are also believing certain things.
Okay. And that belief in this case is different than the first belief, though. Like in the first belief, it's the way we are using that term is more like being secure and sure about something.
Iman, yes.
But in the second case, the unbeliever or the one who does not believe would have at most wishes. Like, would it be certainty is what I'm trying to bring?
So that's a great question. The point I'm trying to make is not about that. The reason I, highlighting this, because when we say unbeliever, it sounds neutral.
Okay.
You see what I mean? Like, because you don't have to believe something.
So let's then say it this way, because if we are going to make them comparable, it should be something like this. One person is, like everybody is seeking satisfaction or security in something. Iman is providing, like using the word iman as Quran uses it. So Iman is providing a solid foundation for security because it shows you your provider, makes you find your true provider. But in the case of denial, kufr, the person is still like cannot stay in the vacuum. People have to get somewhere, be part of a clique or something to say that, no. We couldn't explain it today, but science will find it in the future, for example, since it's nowadays a big bulk of people are going in that direction. So this is becoming another form of quote unquote faith in the sense of English word, though. It's not providing security, but wrapping it around the uncertainty of unknown, like in the future we will find it, saying that, oh yes, or science explained it all. What did science explain? We don't know. They say they did or whatever. Relying in there to find this satisfaction. So I guess in this case, or the security, Iman, now it's a comparable sort of a concept,
No
although
iman without iman.
yeah, but although in one sense, the case of Iman, it sits on top of a solid foundation, it can sit on top of a solid foundation. But in the case of denial, the type of search for security in there is a false sort of a security.
That's the reason in Quranic terminology, at least, with such fundamental concepts, the English word belief is not used. So it's iman, those who have iman, and those who don't have iman. That's the terminology, right? When we translate it in belief, all these problems that you mentioned start emerging. Because when we say believer, we mean those who have certainty, peace in certain things, iman. And then we say unbeliever, but this time we use another meaning for belief. I say unbeliever in the sense that they don't have a certain understanding of it, confuses minds. So so my suggestion is we don't use the word unbeliever.
Okay.
Instead, we can say, the deniers, kafir, those without iman and so on. Otherwise, it will really shape minds, our minds as well, and also the audience in a very the dangerous way. I'm an unbeliever. Like, I don't know what to believe, for instance. I'm just searching. I'm an unbeliever. I couldn't find what to believe. When you take the belief in a positive sense, as if it is possible. When you take it in a negative sense, it's just, yeah, I'm an unbeliever. So what?
That's an important point, actually. So, because this brings us the question, is there a middle point between belief and unbelief? Is there a neutral point between the two? Likewise, as I was planning to bring up the topic to a case study, if you like, that Nursi does in terms of Quran. So let me slightly bring it up. We can go with that, but if you're interested. So he says one day he was listening to people reciting Quran in a mosque. And he says, I felt like as if I am hearing some whispers of Satan. So he says, some question popped up. And the question was saying that, well, you think this Quran is very elevated. But you think so because you are biased. Just be impartial. Listen to it as if it is human speech. Says, for a second, I was deceived by that saying, and I really looked at it as if it was speech of human. And it says, as if when the lights of that mosque would be turned everywhere would become dark, all the lights of Quran immediately shut off. With that perspective, looking at Quran with that perspective, there were no lights, no guidance, no nothing. He says, oh, then I realized that this is a whisper of Satan deceiving me. And he says, from Quran, I asked for guidance, and then he starts having a conversation. Just the intro of the conversation, he says, what is the middle ground between speech of God versus speech of man? How can you be impartial for such a thing? What is the middle? He says. Like, is there a middle between the two? Because if it is, let's say, Bishra's speech versus Dua's speech. Like, Dua has a quality of speak. Bishra, 3.5 years old, she has a level of speech. And you can say, well, Birkan is the middle between the two. Because in that scale, one is quantifiable, another one is quantifiable. Now, what are you saying about speech of God versus speech of men? Like, speech of men, it has a certain capacity. But what do you imagine for speech of God to be? How are you going to find the middle of the two? But even before that, he says, well, what you're suggesting me is not impartiality, actually. You are inviting me to look at it from the exact opposite. Although you're saying that you are being biased, don't look at it as if speech of God. Be unbiased and look at it as if it's speech of man. You're inviting me to become an unbeliever. So he says, what sort of an impartiality is that? Then Satan says, well, okay, be impartial, be neutral. He says, well, this is not possible. How am I going to be neutral? For such a matter, you cannot be neutral. So, lekum dinukum veliyedini, and the conversation goes on. Lekum dinukum veliyedini reminds me of that and what Birkan was saying also, in terms of belief and unbelief. Can you be in between? Like, could it be that, well, I neither admit that there's God nor deny that there's God? What are you? At most, you can say that, well, I don't care, I don't think about it. But can you really? Can you pretend as if nothing is at stake for you? It is pretty much like living in a country and then I have obligations to live in that society, paying taxes, doing like putting my trash in front of the door and whatnot. So how much can I say that, well, I don't care about in this country or anything of that sort? Eventually, since it's part of my life, practically, there comes a point where I will be intersecting with the social life, with the society, with the state. When it comes to living life, now generalize it, I am living the life, I am interacting with the existence, with my physical existence, with my thoughts, with my imagination and everything. I say, well, I'm neutral, I'm impartial, neither believe nor deny. So it's not possible. I mean, there might be degrees, sure, but belief and unbelief, so impartiality in this case is not possible. So either I am on one side or the other side to whatever degree. So I'll continue with Nursi's approach to talk about the big picture eventually, about the case of Quran being speech of human versus Quran being speech of God. I would like to apply it there because I think this Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun could be understood in general as such. Like, this is an application of it to the books, but the same thing can apply to the prophethood as well. I mean, Muhammad was a good man, but he was just asking for, he was a good, smart person. He was willing the betterment of his society, and he came up with these words to like make his barbarian society a civilized society, right? Is such a thing possible to say? Because this seems to be like a middle ground. You are neither accepting his prophethood, nor you are saying that he is a bad person, right? You are saying that, yeah, he was a good person. I'm not denying that he was I'm not claiming that he is a bad person, but he was not a prophet. He was just trying to be nice, you know? Like, look at Birkan. He's also trying to be nice, but he's not as talented as Muhammad, but look what he's trying to do. Again, he's trying to teach people to be nice to their parents, to their neighbors and whatnot. Muhammad was more talented for his people, the barbarian people. This is Orientalist attitude toward Prophet, for example. And you will hear it in probably at Penn, go to Near Eastern Studies. They would talk about Muhammad as a revolutionary. This is why they have prophets, with a sword, prophet in the, what was the building in Washington, D.C. for the law?
White House?
No, not White House. Not the Capitol, but the judge,
Parliament?
some judge place where they make the law. There's a Capitol?
Yes.
Is Capitol not the place where the senators stay?
Oh, you mean where the Supreme Court?
Supreme Court. Yeah, I guess. Okay.
But
So in the Supreme Court, I believe they have statues of 13 or 14 lawmakers, as they say. So they have a statue for Prophet there as well. So they are venerating the messenger, not as a messenger, but as a revolutionary lawmaker, right? So, lakum dinukum waliya dini, as if saying here that there's no middle ground. Either he is the messenger of God, or he is the worst liar that came on earth. You cannot go in between. You cannot say that he's a good person, well, you're just pretending. Because this was the language, hell, heaven, and whatnot. You need to scare the people, otherwise there's no real fire. But yeah, he was using such metaphors, analogies, just to scare those, barbaric Bedouins. So, lekum dinukum waliya dini, in this sense, is saying that there is no middle ground in between the two. But do I see it as such, especially in such a climate of religion becoming so much secularized, even in Muslim countries, the Western civilization becoming the civilization of the everyday life of everybody, like in Muslim countries and everywhere, Hollywood becoming our lifestyle. So, is this distinction, lakum dinukum waliya dini, as it is used with the word deen here, clear to me? Yes. I can keep talking, but I think it's going to start getting boring. What do you guys think?
maybe we can ask a question. Like, we obviously think ourselves as having a deen, a religion. And what other religion that here is suggested that we are against? Or like in our society, do we take it as this is my religion, and the other people have, like the ones at least against me, let's say, have another religion? Do we take it that way? Or, going back to our discussion, or do we take it as we have religion and they don't have religion?
So let me try to exemplify it. Maybe you have better examples. Let's try to make it practical. So have you heard anything of the sort? You call it nature, we call it God. It's at the end of the day, we are really talking about the same thing. Have you heard anything of this sort? Like, yeah, you guys talk about it. Nature does it. We say God does it. It's the same thing. It's just a naming convention, for example. Is it just a naming convention, really, or they are orthogonal to each other?
So such a narrative, it actually complies with these words, the ayahs, because it says, like, you say God, we say nature, we have our religion. It's the same thing. This is a religion, yours is a religion.
Yeah.
But I guess more prevalent approach is that, and we also being treated most of the time, is that there are certain people who are against religion. And they are fighting against religion, and then they don't have a religion. We call them, for instance, atheists. And we buy this. We really think that they don't have a religion. Like most of the academics today, let's say, they will tell you that, no, I don't believe in such things. I don't have a religion.
So in this case, I guess, practically speaking, at least, we can say that, capitalism become their religion, let's say, or, I don't know, chasing for fame become their religion. I guess we have this sort of
because their ritual is, I mean, that could be me as well. I'm using as a they, but it could be that, or the ritual of this religion is to publish more and to make a give a keynote speech in a big conference is the Hajj of this mindset, and I would like to give a keynote speech somewhere. And when I say such, I guess that would be relatable. Like people, I mean, does it sound okay to you? Because to me, this sounds very common knowledge or very acceptable. Does it sound to you the same? Like, although it's not named as a religion per se, but this is the life that I would be dying for if I have such a mindset of seeking for praise, let's say, in the eyes of the people. It has its rituals, it has its worship and putting effort in there. And I am feeling indebted to the society, the scientific community in this case, whose appreciation I am really seeking for. Then I have to fulfill those needs, put the check marks, publish that many papers, or do whatever, so that I will receive what I'm expecting, which is my heaven, giving a keynote speech somewhere, and after which I'm going to get a lot of applause, and that would be my reward. So if somebody says, oh, this is your religion, I mean, you're worshiping, you're putting a lot of effort, and you are feeling indebted towards those people, as if they are not there, you become meaningless, you become nothing. Just imagine such a person gets to, I don't know, some rural area, nobody even knows how to read. How would that person be treated there? Do you know how to plow the earth? No, I don't, the guy says. Do you know how to take care of the cow, like milking? No. What sort of a useless human you would be the response, right? In a rural area, this super duper professor becomes a useless person in the eyes of those people. So such a person is indebted to the existence of scientific community to be valuable. This is why feeling indebted, and I'm using deen in this sense, towards that community now. That becomes the deen for that person. I guess for the, I don't know, celebrities, it becomes supporter of the celebrity and whatnot. So it goes all the way the same. And ibadah in this case is, I am feeling my neediness before those people. Actually, there was a famous singer in Turkey. Well, he was an interesting personality. But in the stage, he would turn, like he's a famous singer, a lot of people are before him. He says, you created me, to the people. But this is truly showing really reality of that person. Because if they don't chant for this guy wouldn't be a thing, because he used to be a singer in the construction, and somebody discovered his sound when he was, like, as he was doing construction business, he was singing songs, and somebody discovered the sound and he became famous. But now he tells people that you created me. So he is as if prostrating before his worshippers, because people are worshiping him, sort of. But now he becomes a worshipper, his worshippers. So in this case, I guess ibadah is related to deen, and other deens, and everybody has a deen in this sense. Even the denier has a deen of whatever is the focus of that person, and that deen has an ibadah. Even the person who hates institutionalized religion has a religion. Go ahead.
And I think we talked about this last week. I think Berkan was mentioning, or you were mentioning, how, like, if you don't declare that I don't follow your religion, or, you know, I don't worship what you worship, you normalize it. You know, it's like how we say these days, like with Palestine, a lot of people are saying, you know, like if you like silence is taking a stand. Um, and it's, you know, I was thinking of it too, like now, especially it's very normalized to just be like, okay, you know, like it's nuanced, you know, like there are nuances to Islam, to whatever, there are different interpretations. Even I had the idea of, oh, you know, like, oh, you know, like, yeah, God revealed those things, but it's like God couldn't have created like a religion that was like super feminist because like people at the time would riot. He was already doing so much. So like now, if Islam is revealed, like it would be like he would give women like equal inheritance and all that, you know. So it's like, you know, you do start to you those ideas get normalized for you, and then you do try to find that middle ground, you know, like what is Islam today? Islam is evolutionary. I mean, I used to say that, you know, like, oh, you know, Islam is evolutionary. It's not today what it was supposed to be 1400 years ago. And it's just wrong, you know, because Islam is for all times. The book of God is for all times. And I think that is why the importance of that say is so important. And I don't just think that say is for the starting verse, but rather for the whole surah, like actually declare it, you know, to you is your religion and to me, my religion. And I want to preserve my religion from your religion because there is no room for blend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there is no center by definition for the two. And am I clear about that? As we were saying, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. So am I going to find some people and say this to them? So it's not really finding those people and speaking out to them. I mean, if you find them, yes, sure, go ahead. But more importantly, in my world, do I have this clear distinction? And do I have the stand to say it internally? Am I able to distinguish the difference in the first place? Mm-hmm. This is why the example of, God and nature, they are the same thing. I heard this from within MSA, this sort of things, like Muslim students speak these words. It sounds like, they call it nature, but we thought that they are also talking about the same thing. So if I do not see the difference between these, or another example, I was having this conversation with a brother, and he was trying very hard to say that evolution is not against Islam. And we had long conversations about that with Birkan. And I didn't say what was our conclusion of this without listening to him after 2 hours, because I initially
I'm confused. There was a guy who saying that the evolution is not against Islam.
Yeah.
I'm with him as well.
No. So we had such conversations for quite so long. We have a conclusion, which could be said that, just to put the last word at the very beginning, our conclusion was at some point, well, I hope it's not going to be misunderstood, but as long as you come to a conclusion that, everything moment by moment is being created by the creator, created it this way, that way, wouldn't change anything for me really. But this being said, when you say evolution is compliant with Islam or anything of this sort, now you need to step back and say, well, wait a second. When you say evolution, it comes with a worldview. It is not simply change of one thing to another thing. The word itself is implying that it's changing by itself. But when you say, oh, the creator is creating every single moment, he is the giver of existence for everything in space and time-wise, you are already talking about a different perspective altogether. You have to reframe it, rename it. So you cannot use the word evolution for that. Because when you say evolution, it comes with a totally different worldview. So this is why, are you aware of this distinction? You cannot use that language. We had a long conversation, maybe 3-4 hours in total with that brother. But I said, okay, yes, now I just told him what we discussed, what I told you in a single sentence. That would be fine. But and I saw that he is in the same place in terms of thought. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam, wa alaikum assalam. But the problem is, you cannot, once you use that word, you cannot communicate it. It's going to be going in the totally wrong direction. So, lekum dinukum waliya dini in this case is make this distinction. Be clear about that. Do not try to, it's not a, innocent way of bridging the gaps. Because that gap is so large, unless you construct everything from scratch, let it be for biology. I mean, since the example of evolution, if you do not construct everything on top of Tawheed and then explain the phenomena within that framework, borrowing that word from there is going to go in the wrong direction. Because it comes with its loaded terminology.
So today I was reading an article which is about the human language and the mortal behavior. And the abstract is starting as, and this is like a highly scientific one.
This is a real scientific paper.
Yeah.
And you're reading from abstract.
I might even have, oh no, I didn't cite this. For that reason, you will understand I didn't cite. But yeah, it is highly scientific. Evolution and the brain have done a marvelous job solving many tricky problems in action control, including problems of learning, hierarchical control over serial behavior, continuous recalibration, and fluency in the face of slow feedback. So according to authors, evolution and brain have done a marvelous job solving these problems, which I cannot even understand. So my brain, is more clever than mine itself. Given that the evolution tends to be conservative, it shouldn't be surprising that these solutions are exploited to solve other tricky problems. So it's not that only it is very clever, it is so clever that it even reuses certain the approaches to solve other problems as well. Like it, for instance, evolves it again, the whatever it is we worship, it evolves your motor system, the way you move, and then it thinks, oh, this is good. I will use the same thing for language development as well. I will use the same mechanisms for the language development. So clever. So, and that's what I'm trying to emphasize. Like when we think about such things, we take them as, with your terminology, as if like the neutral state, maybe middle ground, whatever. A neutral state, they don't believe. They're just looking at the facts and whatever. No, they worship something. It's so obvious. Like even I am not that clear with my religion. When I, for instance, think about my daughter, I'm not sure in some certain moments that the God that I worship creates her certain attributes. I'm not that certain. And I find myself in doubt sometimes. But for these authors, for instance, he's so certain that the thing that called nature creates things in this way or that way. So he's obviously worshiping something. There's a being there. It's not a neutral state.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That also reminds me of this teacher I had, this physics teacher in my last 2 years of high school. And he, like for most of his lectures, he would teach us no physics and we would just get a lecture about like life, God. So we really liked him, like even though like, I didn't learn any physics, I didn't want to move out of his lecture because, he was telling us so much about like life and he was telling the boys to not rely on their like dad's money and whatnot. So, and he was like learned in Islam. And I think he also like knew a bit about Sufism and he used to talk about it a little bit. And this one time, like he gave us this lecture on how the energy you send out into the universe will send that energy back to you. And it was like, I mean, at the time I was really fascinated. I was like, wow, you know, like karma exists, like that's so cool. But now I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, you know, that's the danger, like outwardly, and he was learned too, and he was, you know, a religious man, but these ideas, they're very like tempting. These even like Buddhist ideas of like, you know, just peace and whatnot, like they can be very dangerous. So if you don't declare that, if you don't think, you can start to like blend your own religion into them.
Yeah. So I guess in this case, in those, let's say, peace is going to be mentioned. It's good. Peace is everybody's peace. Peace is good. But what does it serve? Within that context, what does it mean? So when Prophet says peace, where does it fit? When a denier says peace, where does it fit? So which peace is real? When Prophet says freedom, what does it mean? And by Prophet, I mean prophetic mission. And when a Western civilization says, oh, you're free, just why follow anything? Why be under the oppression of someone, some god, some mythology or something? What does that freedom mean? Do they mean the same freedom? So that's why that chapter is inviting me to be clear about the boundaries. And for the past 2-3 years, in our other discussions with Birkan, we have been focusing on prophethood, because this recently became a thing in the Turkey. Like people started, as they call it, as deists, or denying the prophethood, or just saying that, well, it's unnecessary, sort of a thing. But he was a good person. Actually, there was this one professor of tafsir, and he's a very well-spoken person as well. Impressively nice speaking for the common people like me. In a candid conversation environment, somebody got the recording, and he was saying that, look, it was hard times. Like Prophet was under too much pressure. And you see there's this verse. Like this verse literally means he's swearing to that person. Like, how come God is going to talk about that? Come on. Like, we just put the word over there. Come on. Is this it sounds very honest, very correct. I mean, yeah, you're right. But what does that mean?
Open-minded.
Open-minded and also very honest. And he was saying that just empathize with the person, man. Like Muhammad was under too much pressure. It's understandable. He's human. This is how he was presenting it. But do you know what you're saying? Do you know what's at stake at this moment? Should be my attitude. Once I hear that, what you're just saying is, for a second, even this had been, let's say he was just couldn't help it that he kept preaching this verse that you say he fabricated for 23 years. What sort of a liar is that? Lying in the name of God, because Prophet never said that, well, this portion is my making, but the rest is. What sort of a liar you're talking about? And that person, like I will come and say that, oh, Muhammad Siyal told me to do this and that, with all my goodwill. What would Muhammad Siyal come and say after he hears that I am making up words from his mouth? And how would you feel about me once you figure out that Muhammad Siyal didn't say any of these? Even if you had good intentions of mine, you would lose your trust to me. Muhammad Siyal, if he can, would bang my head somewhere, right? So what sort of a prophet you have? So you are actually talking about a total liar. How can I empathize with such a person? So do I have this clear distinction? There's no middle ground. Yes, you have something there?
Oh, I guess it's just more of like an interesting anecdote as well, where I was also debating with a friend of mine. I think she actually joined one of these sessions a while back. I've been trying to get her to join, but
Give me the name. Give me the
that she never want to join. But yeah, so we were actually like talking about like evolution and like sort of differences in like religion and viewpoints and perspectives. So she's like in the medical field. So, and a lot of her kind of, I guess, perspectives come from like, you know, building this compromise like between people of differing like backgrounds and viewpoints so that you can like effectively give them like the proper care that they need. So I feel like a lot of like, at least in medicine, is sort of like, you know, putting your own views to the side to like serve a broad population. And I guess she was like also kind of in the line of like, well, what if evolution, like this, thinking about evolution in this way doesn't go like necessarily have to go against Islam. And I'm ashamed to say in the moment, I don't think I made a clear distinction there. But she was coming from the viewpoint of like, oh, if you have someone who really like doesn't know any better and who's like really set on this, and like you can't really force, like, I guess another point is that if I come across such a person who is like very like hard set, evolution is what explains like everything. I also can't just come and like be forceful about in my approach and be like, no, you're totally wrong. Like, I guess it's like what we were talking about earlier, like how do we sort of interact with that viewpoint and make that clear distinction if we don't, if it's also incumbent upon us to not like force anyone into like changing their viewpoint as well.
I think in this case, because this is also in the traditional tafsir, this is mentioned a lot. Does this mean that like your way is your, my way is mine, and then I'm going to just say that, okay, yours is yours, mine is mine, and I'm done? This shouldn't be understood as such, nor that it should be understood as going and finding and knocking their door and like, what does this say? So this, in my world, is the distinction so clear? Then the second question is, if I am so clear, how am I going to communicate it with others? So if, like in the how you handle children, if your child knows that you're not going to give that chocolate, you don't have to yell at the child, and the child keep asking the chocolate. Let's say you know that the chocolate is dangerous, and you're 100% sure about that. Maryam is good at this. Is she there? Yes, mashallah. So she speaks in a tone that the child knows that no matter what Zainab or Ali does, she's not going to get it out of Maryam. I will lose my temper. She does not. She just says, well, I'm not giving it. If you don't eat this, there's no more Peppa Pig. And Zainab knows that she has to eat it to get the Peppa Pig. So can I be as clear, like respectfully, but not respecting your ideas, but respecting you as a human? I'm not yelling at you. I'm not forcing you, but you're wrong. Sorry. Like what you're saying is wrong. And I'm pretty sure about what I am following is truth. And we can have a meaningful conversation. I am here if you're open for that. And we can talk hours. I will make myself available if you are seeking truth, which I believe that this is truth. And I'm open for a conversation. And I'll not try to bend it for whatever. I mean, I'm going to be kind towards you as a person, but I do not respect that idea. I respect you as a human. I do respect your creator created you as a valuable human. And you are just, like, imagine a drug addict in the street. How would you address the drug addict? I respect you as a human, and I feel sorry for how you're ruining all those potentialities that is given for you. And I'm sorry for you, and I would like to help you. But I totally disagree with how you're treating yourself. It's no good. I'm not going to give into that. If the person says, well, love me with my drug addiction, I would say no. Like, I love you as a human, as the creator created you, but I despise that drug addiction part of it. It's not good. You will never give into that. And giving into that is not respecting that person, nor it is being kind to that person. Actually, it's bad. But I have this distinction because for us, drug addiction is bad, period. Everybody accepts this. But do I see, so I'll see, Al does not, it's just saying like this. Okay, but do I see unbelief as dangerous, for example, as killing humanity of that person? Because drug addiction is really killing humanity of that person. Certain aspects of that human starts disappearing, right? People start becoming like zombies, unfortunately. And you do see this visibly. Like certain qualities are just going away. How about unbelief? What does it take away? So I think this lekum dinukum waliya dini, am I clear about that? And as Dua was saying, kul at the beginning is saying that be clear about this in your world, but also be, when somebody from outside looks, they will see this comfort in you. Like this guy is stepping on a solid ground. Because am I like a shaken leaf? Is my belief like a shaken leaf? Or is it like a solid tree, let's say, rooted deep? And you know that whatever wind comes, I am standing here. So that kul in this case, now that you are able to even say it out loud, and people know it. And there was some, actually, that would be even a service by itself. Let's say if people know that, oh, within Penn, there are 2-3 students who are so sure and secure. I don't know the answer by myself, but I know that student knows it. And I can go and ask that student. Your stand in there becomes a source of support for that person's deed. Just standing firm in there, even if maybe that person you never know that person's name. That person saw you somewhere, watching you from far. But seeing that certainty, that distinction, becomes a strength of faith, iman, for that person. Because everybody is in need of support this way or that way. That's why congregation is really helping. And we talked about this, how iman is proof-based and denial is just negation, like denying, covering up. So iman, proof-based thing, two people's proof supports each other. And a third person can rely on your proof. But even if there are a million deniers, this does not prove anything. It's not adding up. Denial does not add up. But iman, confirmation, adds up. This is why if I can stand with that certainty, this could become a source of support for people out there. May Allah make us steadfast and clear in those distinctions. And there has to be a lot of unlearning in this sense. We have to question ourselves. How about this? How about that? There are many things that I blended. It might be with culture, as Dua was mentioning, like this. I don't know, you send something to nature, or whatever. There are tons of things in there. And you see it more as you see other cultures, because you realize, oh, this was my culture, part of my culture then, because you don't see it in Pakistanis. Then the Pakistanis sees the same in you, then or science versus or whatever, in all environments. We'll need to go through this and find that clear distinction within our life. May Allah make us appreciate that. And then there was this part which we talked about, communal versus singular. We talked about this in the first discussion. So I'm concluding in here. Any concluding remarks from you? سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد